17 teams to go on my road to predict all 131 teams this college football offseason. We're moving on to the Eastern Michigan Eagles, another team from the Mid-American Conference that did make a bowl game last season. And Eastern Michigan, very well likely able to do that again in 2022. There are a couple key parts that leave this team offensively, defensively, especially the quarterback, which we'll talk about in a little bit. He's moved on to a former program. Yeah, a little interesting story with the quarterback here at this team. But Eastern Michigan, if that quarterback can be as effective as the old quarterback, this Eastern Michigan team can definitely do some great, great things this season. So can Eastern Michigan find themselves back in a bowl game in 2022? Or will this be an Eagles team that misses out on the postseason? What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate, and welcome to my channel. I'm predicting all 131 teams this college football offseason, which means I'm doing your favorite team. So go ahead, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell so you know when that video gets uploaded. And for fans of the Eastern Michigan Eagles out there, you guys are going to know this team a lot more than I do. So if you feel like I missed something, you want to add something, hey, no worries. Just leave it in the comment section down below. I'd be happy to hear what you guys have to say. Let's talk about the Eagles in 2022, my 6th-ranked team in the Mid-American Conference coming into the 2022 college football season. Last year, again, another fairly good season, fairly average season in general, but pretty good season for Eastern Michigan overall. They were 7-6, including a bowl game win, 4-4 in conference. And this overall was a fairly solid team. I mean, offensively, 381 yards per game, did score 31 points per game, so was one of the better scoring offenses in the conference. And defensively, this is where they may need a little work. Allowed 430 yards per game with around 28 points per game. Definitely cannot let your opponents gain almost 4.5 football fields on you. But Eastern Michigan, again, overall was a solid team a season ago. However, one key part to this team from last year was their quarterback, Ben Bryant, and he has since gone. So Ben Bryant, little interesting story with him. He was originally committed to the University of Cincinnati. After a couple of years there, decided to transfer over to Eastern Michigan last year, and this is the only year he spent with the Eagles. In fact, transferred back to Cincinnati, where he will be that starting quarterback now that Desmond Ridder is gone, a team that made the playoff last year. So Ben Bryant has transferred back to his former program. He will not be the starting quarterback for the Eagles in 2022, and neither will Preston Hutchinson. But let me go through stats on Ben Bryant. He had 3,121 yards, 14 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, so numbers that aren't going to pop out at you, but also did have a 68% completion percentage. Ben Bryant was pretty good for this team. And Preston Hutchinson, well, was that backup last year, 216 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. So he is gone there as well. In the running back room, you lose Javon Hamilton, who was your leading rusher a season ago, had 631 yards and 4 touchdowns a season ago, so you do lose that production there, as well as Latrell Fordham out of the wide receiver room. Only had 8 catches for 107 yards last year, but it's still production lost. A couple tight ends gone in Bryson Cannon and Thomas Odukoya. You're losing a couple tight ends there, who were your 5th and 6th leading receivers, respectively, a season ago, combined for 5 touchdowns last year. On the defensive side, Turin Rush, Wu Scott, Michael Smith, a couple names on the defensive line that are gone. Terry Myrick is a linebacker that's gone, had 85 tackles last year, which was 2nd on the team. Matthew Bushman, another name that leaves there as well. And then in the defensive back, Alvinoski LaFleur, who was the 4th leading tackler last year with 51, did have a sack and a half there as well. And Jarrett Paul, another defensive back that is leaving the defensive backfield, was the 6th leading tackler last year with 46. And I believe led the team with 6 passes defended a season ago. So definitely needing some guys to step up, especially in the quarterback play. And coming into the year, you figured Austin Smith, or coming into the offseason, you figured Austin Smith was going to be that guy. Only threw 1 pass last year, but hey, completed it for 16 yards. Okay, there you go. In fact, this team also had 3 other players, not a quarterback, throw a pass last year, and they completed every single one of them. We'll talk more about that later. But they do have a quarterback coming into this program by the name of Taylor Powell. If that name doesn't sound familiar, I will remind the Eastern Michigan fans and everyone out there, yeah, he was the former quarterback at Troy. Put up some pretty solid numbers for that Troy program. I would expect that Taylor Powell may end up getting that starting role in their week 1 matchup. Now, if Austin Smith gets it, it's not going to surprise me. I do believe that Taylor Powell may, at the very end of the day, prove to be the better quarterback. Definitely has more experience under his belt. So I think the job should go to Taylor Powell, but we'll see what the Eagles do at the starting quarterback position. You get a couple running backs back, even though your leading rusher is gone. Hey, you still got Darius Boone, who had 451 yards and 6 touchdowns. And you still have Samson Evans, who only had 316 yards, but get this, had 13 rushing touchdowns a season ago. So do have a couple running backs that are pretty solid for you coming back. Your leading receiver comes back. He was a 1,000-yard receiver last year. It's Hassan Beydoun, had 1,015 yards and 4 touchdowns. Dylan Drummond also comes back, 704 yards, 6 touchdowns, with the second leading receiver, Tanner New, there as well, with 342 yards and a touchdown. The third leading receiver, heck, a name that's not even on this list, but the fourth leading receiver in Zach Westmoreland. Had 298 yards and a touchdown, or 293 yards, and a touchdown. He comes back as well. Tight end this year should probably end up being Gunnar Oaks, had 125 yards and a touchdown last year. And Saidi Sow is an NFL prospect coming back on the offensive line. On the defensive side, you have guys like Jose Ramirez. No, not the baseball player, the football defensive lineman who had 6.5 sacks last year for this team and was the third leading tackler. 6.5 sacks led the team. Also, Mikey Haney, Jordan Crawford, a couple other names there on the defensive line. In the linebacker room, you have Tariq Spates. Joe Sparacio is a transfer coming in, and E.J. Williams going to be coming back for this team. Tariq Spates was the leading tackler last year at 89 tackles, couple passes defended, had a sack last year. And then the defensive back position, you have Kempton Shine, David Carter, Blake Bogan coming back here for this team. And also a guy that's not on this list, but a guy that I just noticed now, named by Russell Vaden. He only had 10 tackles last year, but led the team, had 3 interceptions a season ago. So definitely a ball hawking type player there with Russell Vaden. So expect him to play some pretty solid minutes for this team there as well. I believe he should be moved into a starting role this year, if I'm not mistaken. So look for him on the field. But, I mean, especially depending on who this quarterback is, this is going to be a solid Eastern Michigan team. If it's Taylor Powell, this Eastern Michigan team might improve from last year. If it's Austin Smith to start, maybe you lose a game you shouldn't. They move to Taylor Powell. They start winning some football games. But who knows how the season is going to go. I think a lot depends, though, on what they get out of that quarterback play. You look at the schedule here, and it starts off simple enough. You have a game against Eastern Kentucky. Okay, kind of a feeling out game. You get a sense to find out who your quarterback is going to be for this upcoming season. But then things get really tricky really fast. You get 2 tough road games. You got to go on the road to play Louisiana. The Raging Cajuns were the Sun Belt champs last year and won 13 games. And then on the road against Arizona State there as well. That's a team that, well, they lose just an enormous amount of talent from the portal. Returning production is not great for this team. However, there are a lot of transfers coming in. They're getting Emory Jones from Florida. Lots of talented players, even coming back, like Merlin Robertson is sticking around on this team. It's an Arizona State team that I don't think is going to be great this year, but could prove me and a lot of other people wrong. And your last non-conference game is UMass. Watch out for Ellis Merriweather. Otherwise, not really that talented of a football team. In conference play, you have home games against Buffalo, Northern Illinois, Toledo, and Central Michigan. You have games on the road against Western Michigan, Ball State, Akron, and Kent State. So diving in a little bit to the schedule, again, you have a game that is simple enough to start out this campaign. That game against Eastern Kentucky, that should be a win. Your next 2 games are going to be challenges to this team. Now, I don't think Eastern Michigan fans in and of themselves, even the most optimistic ones, don't necessarily expect them to win either of those 2 games. Maybe they can beat Arizona State depending on how the Sun Devils do this year, but the Sun Devils still figure to be, at least talent-wise, a more talented team than Eastern Michigan would be this year. And then when you look here, and of course Louisiana was the Sun Belt champs a season ago, and they can absolutely do it again this upcoming season. When you take a look in conference play, well, some tricky games here, but there are a lot of very winnable ones. You got the home game against Buffalo, and Buffalo loses a lot from last year to a team that already wasn't very good. That could be one of the worst teams in the MAC this year. On the road against Ball State, they're losing a lot from last year. That also could be one of the worst teams in the MAC this year. And Akron probably could end up being the worst team in the MAC last year. This year, they lost their best player in Kanata Mumpfield, that wide receiver that would have put up fantastic numbers for this Akron team, but he's transferred over to Pitt. Then, from there, there's a lot of interesting ones. On the road against Western Michigan, at home against Northern Illinois, at home against Toledo, that road game against Kent State, and then you may very well be playing the most talented team in the conference when you go when you stay at home and play Central Michigan. So lots of interesting games there. They definitely can pull off wins against Northern Illinois. Hey, a team that won the conference last year, Central Michigan, both those games are at home, but you got some tricky road games you can't overlook either, right? Western Michigan, that's going to be a hard road game against Kent State there as well. And Toledo, even, that game at home, they're losing some pieces, but that's also one of the favorites in this conference. So looking across this conference slate, Eastern Michigan has its tricky games there. But non-conference, they're going to be well-tested coming into conference play. Now, I don't do game-by-game predictions. I do a more percentage-based outlook to help me predict the team's record. So if the game is in red, I just don't see you winning the game. If the game is in orange, I still don't see you winning. But it is college football, and upsets can happen. Yellow are your 50-50 or high upset potential games. Games in yellow-green are games you should win. But hey, watch out for the team on the other side of the ball. In games in green, I have you winning. Again, you should be able to beat Eastern Kentucky, maybe play both quarterbacks there and figure out who that starter is going to be, whether it be Austin Smith or Taylor Powell. Heading into the next two games there, you could easily put both games in red, and you could easily flip them or whatever you want to do. I just don't think Eastern Michigan is going to win either of those two games, either against Louisiana or against Arizona State. So I think starting out the year 1-2, for Eastern Michigan is the most likely, most realistic possibility. Then their next two games, well, I think they should be able to win. They get both of them at home, and they're both going to be teams that I don't think are going to fare too well this year. Now, Buffalo does have their respective good parts, but all around that Buffalo team is not great. Eastern Michigan definitely more talented, and by this point, we should probably be figuring out who that starting quarterback is. They have a lot of nice weapons in the skills corps, and then when you look at the defensive side of things, well, Jose Ramirez, Tariq Spates, even a guy that I just mentioned in Russell Vaden not on the list. They have good players in each level of the defense, should be able to win both of those games. Again, UMass, watch out for Ellis Merriweather. He can put up yards, but if Eastern Michigan can stop him, not much else to worry about there with UMass. And then they should be able to beat Akron there towards the later stages of the season. Akron's not going to be very good this year. Now, looking at the rest of the conference slate, yeesh. Again, some tricky games. Even going on the road to play Ball State, that game is bordering on a yellow-green game for me, bordering on a 60-40 game, maybe a 65-35 game in favor of Eastern Michigan, because I still think the Eagles may be able to pull that one out. But Ball State may not get a lot of wins in Mid-American Conference this year, and that could be a game right there where the Cardinals can take one. Otherwise, I mean, that road game against Western Michigan, they lose Caleb Ellaby, lose Sky Moore. Still a lot of solid talent on that football team. Northern Illinois won the conference last year. Toledo, Kent State, going to be some of the front runners in their respective divisions. And Central Michigan may very well be the most talented team in the Mid-American Conference. They're returning Lou Nichols. They're returning that quarterback. Some talent on the defensive side as well. Central Michigan's going to be hard to beat this upcoming year. When I look at this Eastern Michigan team, I like a lot of pieces they have. I think they have good returning production in the skills corps. Their defense is looking pretty good, in my opinion, there as well. It's just a matter of the quarterback play. Can Austin Smith, or in my opinion, can Taylor Powell end up being as effective as Ben Bryant? And I think they can. However, I don't know that that necessarily translates to more wins for this Eastern Michigan team. I do have them going bowling yet again at 6-6. I think as long as that quarterback production can be solid enough for this Eastern Michigan team, hey, this schedule is very doable to get right back into the postseason. 4-8 I have as the floor, 8-4 I have as the ceiling, but right in the middle there is 6-6, which is right about where I think this Eastern Michigan team would be. That's going to do it for my predictions on the Eagles. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, anything like that. It does help support the channel. And remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. I'll see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.